Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive? Today, we're tackling a topic that's close to my heart, the world of fearful avoidant attachment, but specifically within autism.
Oh, that's a fascinating one, yeah.
We're gonna, try to unpack how these two intertwine,
Right.
create a really unique set of challenges.
Mm-hmm.
And to guide us through all this, we're turning to Cheap ABA. They have a great article all about this.
Okay, great.
And get this, we're going to find out why even something like sensory sensitivity, which, common in autism, can actually make fearful avoidant attachment even harder.
Yeah.
So,
But to really get into the complexities, we need to sort of break down what fearful avoidant attachment is in the first place.
okay,
It's, it goes beyond just shyness, right? You're not
Right.
just hesitant.
right.
It's more this deep longing for close relationships.
Uh-huh.
But then, at the same time, the very idea of that closeness fills you with absolute terror.
Wow.
So you have this push and pull happening. It's almost like a paradox.
Mm-hmm.
It makes forming those bonds, those close relationships, incredibly difficult.
So what causes that back and forth? I mean, is it like an inherent thing? Are people just born with it?
Well, it's not so much about like being born with it as it is about how your early experiences shape you.
Okay.
So if you have inconsistent caregiving during your childhood, or even caregiving that's frightening, that can actually lead to this attachment style.
Wow.
Because what happens is it creates this underlying uncertainty, right? Like, can you really trust other people to be there for you?
Mm-hmm.
To really provide that love and support that you crave deep down.
Yeah.
And so what ends up happening is you fall into this cycle.
Yeah.
And it's kind of heartbreaking when you think about it,
Yeah.
You're seeking that connection, but then the second you start to feel a little vulnerable, the second you fear that maybe you're going to get rejected, you withdraw, you pull back.
It makes a lot of sense, though, when you put it that way, because you so desperately want that connection, but the risk is just, it's almost too much to bear.
It is. It is.
And I know the article talks about this cycle,
Yeah.
reaching out and pulling back,
Mm-hmm.
almost like an emotional tug of war.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Can you give us an example, maybe, of what that might look like?
Oh, absolutely.
Hmm.
So let's say you have someone with this fearful avoidant attachment. They might reach out to a friend. Maybe they even initiate, a hangout or something like that.
Right.
But then at the last minute, they cancel.
Oh, yeah.
Or, maybe they'll open up about something that's really personal, something they've been struggling with. But then almost immediately, they regret it.
Uh-huh.
And so they shut down.
Yeah.
They push the other person away.
It's like a defense mechanism.
It is. It is.
Mhm.
And the thing is, it's not because they don't care.
Yeah.
Deep down, they really do yearn for that connection. But the fear takes over.
Right.
It just sabotages every effort that they make.
And I imagine this is where things get even more complicated when we're talking about folks on the autism spectrum.
Right.
Right? Because for them, social interaction can already be such a challenge.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I'm guessing when you add fearful avoidant attachment to the mix, it just intensifies everything.
It does. It really does. Because you have certain core traits of autism that can actually make the struggles of this specific attachment style even more pronounced, more obvious.
Okay.
So, for example, let's just take sensory sensitivities, something very common, right, with autism.
Yeah.
You might have a child with autism who, deep down, really craves playtime with friends, really wants to be social.
Right.
But then you take him to a playground,
Okay.
and it's just all the noises, all the chaos. It just becomes too much.
Yeah. Too overwhelming.
It's totally overwhelming. And it's not that they don't enjoy socializing.
Right.
It's that their sensory system is on overload.
Yeah.
It leads to meltdowns, to withdrawal, to behaviors that other people might then misinterpret as disinterest.
Yeah, they might think they're being intentionally rude or something.
Exactly, exactly. And so you have this situation where they want to connect, but their body's just not cooperating.
It's almost like trying to have a conversation with someone while there's like an air horn going off right next to your ear.
That's a perfect analogy. It's just too much.
You'd probably want to retreat too.
You would. And it doesn't stop there. So let's imagine this same child trying to make friends.
Okay.
They're out there, they're trying, but they might miss certain social cues.
Like what?
Little things. A playful nudge from a friend.
Yeah.
A joke that's meant to be sarcastic.
Right.
And they take it literally.
Yeah.
They respond in ways that other kids might see as off or awkward or even strange.
Right.
And this can lead to confusion,
Uh-huh.
to hurt feelings on both sides, and ultimately it reinforces that deep-seated fear of rejection.
It almost becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
It does, doesn't it?
Because they're so afraid of getting hurt, they end up doing the thing that might actually push people away.
Right.
And then that just confirms in their mind, like, oh, see, I'm not good at this.
I was right to be afraid. Exactly.
Right.
And the reactions they get from other people, we can't forget about that.
Oh, that's a good point.
Because autistic individuals might not express their emotions in typical ways.
Right.
They might not respond to social situations the way neurotypical people expect.
Yeah.
And so the feedback they get can be very inconsistent. Think about it. Someone might offer a hug, right?
Mm-hmm.
Trying to be comforting.
Mm-hmm.
But this child, they might be overwhelmed by touch. So they pull away.
Right.
And then that simple interaction, meant to be kind, could be misinterpreted as rejection,
Yeah.
which just deepens their distrust.
Right.
Makes them even more hesitant to seek out that closeness in the future.
Wow. It's like this vicious cycle where even attempts at connection, even if they're well-intentioned, can kind of backfire.
They can.
And then, on top of all of that, you add in the challenge of rigid thinking patterns, which we know are very common in autism.
Right, exactly.
How does that play into all of this?
Well, you have to think about how someone with both autism and fearful avoidant attachment might perceive things. So let's say they see a friend having a bad day.
Okay.
That friend might just be in a bad mood,
Right.
but this child might assume, oh, it's my fault.
Right.
It must not like me anymore.
Yeah.
Their thinking is very black and white.
Right.
It's hard for them to understand the nuances of relationships.
Yeah, the gray areas.
The gray areas, exactly. That friendships can have ups and downs.
Right.
That a single negative interaction doesn't erase all the positive ones that came before it.
So even something as simple as a friend, just needing a little space could feel like the end of the world
It could.
to them.
Yeah.
It just adds to that anxiety and that fear of abandonment.
Right.
I'm already feeling for anyone, especially a young person facing this double whammy of challenges.
Yeah.
Knowing all of this, I have to ask, like, what can people do?
Right.
I mean, what can we do to make a difference?
Mhm.
I'm hoping you've got some hopeful strategies to share.
I do. I think the first and most important thing is really understanding.
Okay.
Right. Once you recognize what challenges are at play, then you can start to build an environment that actually fosters security and trust,
Right.
which is exactly what someone with fearful avoidant attachment needs.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
They need to thrive. So one of the most powerful things you can do is create predictability.
Okay.
Think routines,
Mm-hmm.
clear expectations, minimizing surprises,
Especially in social situations.
especially in social situations.
Okay.
If you're already anxious about connecting with others, not knowing what to expect can make it that much harder.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense.
It's almost like, if you know the script in advance,
Yeah.
you're not as worried about messing up your lines.
Right.
You're more comfortable.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
And that idea of taking things slow is really important.
Okay.
Don't rush things.
Mm-hmm.
Don't push for intimacy too quickly. Instead, encourage that gradual exposure to social situations, to closer relationships, and let the individual set the pace.
I can see how that would be so important for someone with autism, especially if they're already dealing with sensory overload or social anxiety.
Absolutely.
It's like dipping your toes in the pool instead of being thrown in the deep end.
Exactly. You want to create a sense of safety every step of the way.
Right.
And along with that, open and honest communication is key.
Okay. Yeah.
Encourage the individual to express their feelings,
Yeah.
their fears, their needs, without judgment.
That's huge.
It is.
Yeah.
Let them know it's okay to say, hey, this is too much for me right now.
Right.
Or, I need a break. Creating that safe space for vulnerability is really essential.
That's such a good point. But it's not just about expressing feelings though, right? I mean,
Mhm.
it's also about like giving them the tools to manage those big emotions. The kind that can come with fearful avoidant attachment and with autism.
Absolutely. Teaching those emotional regulation skills is like giving them a toolbox,
Yeah.
to navigate all of those difficult emotions that can come up.
What are some of the tools in the toolbox?
So there are lots of things you can try.
Okay.
Deep breathing exercises, those are great.
Great.
Mindfulness techniques,
Mm-hmm.
even sensory-based calming strategies.
Like what?
Oh, things like weighted blankets
Oh, yeah.
or, having a quiet space where they can retreat to.
Right.
All of these can make a huge difference when those intense emotions start to take over.
And I'm guessing consistency from the people around them is really important too.
That's huge. Yeah.
Right. Because I mean, you need to like model that dependable, that trustworthy presence that they might not have always experienced consistently in the past.
You're absolutely right. Be the person that they can rely on. Be the one who shows up consistently, listens without judgment, doesn't overreact to their anxieties or their struggles.
Hmm.
Prove to them that relationships can be safe havens, not minefields.
That's such a good point.
And remember, sometimes it takes a village. So don't hesitate to reach out for professional guidance.
Okay.
Therapists, ABA specialists, they can offer really tailored strategies and interventions.
Hmm.
There's no shame in seeking out that extra support.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Really, really not.
That's a good reminder. It sounds like we've covered a lot of ground here.
Yeah, we have.
I mean, from understanding this intricate interplay between fearful avoidant attachment and autism to really exploring these practical ways to provide support.
We have.
So just to recap for our listeners, we started by defining fearful avoidant attachment, that push and pull
Mm-hmm.
between wanting to be close, wanting those connections,
Right.
but being terrified of it.
Yeah.
Often rooted in those early childhood experiences.
Right. Exactly.
And then we talked about how autism can kind of add this other layer of complexity to it all,
Mm-hmm.
with things like sensory sensitivities, difficulty with social cues,
Right.
and rigid thinking patterns.
It's a lot to navigate.
All of these making it even harder to navigate relationships.
Yeah.
But the good news is there's so much that we can do to help.
There is. There is.
All right.
That's the most important part.
I mean, we talked about, creating the safe and predictable environment, respecting individual pace, encouraging open communication, teaching these really important emotional regulation skills,
Right.
and being that consistent and reliable presence.
Yeah.
It's all about understanding
It is.
and acceptance and
Yeah.
meeting individuals where they are with compassion and a willingness to learn.
Absolutely.
And before we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with something to ponder.
Okay.
Think about someone maybe even someone you love, who might be struggling with these combined challenges of autism and fearful avoidant attachment.
Mm-hmm.
What's one small but meaningful step that you can take today to create a more supportive, more understanding environment for them?
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
A really powerful one to consider.
Yeah.
Because it could. Yeah.
Especially when you're dealing with something as complex as what we've been talking about today.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a reminder that we all have the power to create a more inclusive, more supportive world.
Yeah.
One interaction at a time.
You really do. One interaction at a time.
So until our next deep dive, everyone, keep exploring,
Yes.
keep learning,
Absolutely.
and keep spreading that kindness and understanding wherever you go.
That's it.
Because you never know the impact you might have on someone's life.
You really, really don't.
All right. Well, we'll catch you next time.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.